then the adoption, then we're turning to item 2, adopting the minutes of the March 2nd meeting that I so famously managed to miss. And I think everyone's received those minutes. Any amendments or changes to that? You guys are such an easy crowd. So let's go ahead with the recommendation that those be adopted. Who would like to? There's Michael and Penny again. God bless you.
All in favor?
All in favor.
Oh. Number 3 is public comments. I don't think we have anybody with us. There's nobody in the waiting room, right? Okay. I keep forgetting I'm not controlling for a change. It's lovely. And then number 4, the action items from the last meeting. It looks like a lot of Aoife action to me. Aoife, do you want to speak to that list of 7?
Yeah, sorry, if we can just step back to the public comments. I did get a commentary before this meeting just from somebody who was hoping that we could maybe consider some COVID related potentially programs that may come into play. So whether or not we're postponing, maybe we might consider another alternative, but just to put that out there. Then the action items that I delivered on, I made amendment per really good recommendation. So thank you, committee, for those. And those items they're ready and waiting. I'd love to get them out if and on the website. I need to get the website updated.
We're losing you a bit.
A lot of people watching out for it. Sorry.
Did you guys hear that?
No, you're freezing up, Aoife.
You're freezing up a bit, dude.
Great face.
I actually upgraded my internet. I had 5G and I've now gone to the next again while I'm at home. So sorry. What I was going to say is that the action items, I've made changes per your recommendation, so everything is there waiting.
Yeah.
Okay. Terrific.
Thank you for your inputs. Thank you.
Yes.
The workshop, though, I guess we're going to leave.
The timing of that will need to be adjusted. Yeah.
Okay. So those are pending then.
Which brings us to item 5, which is the question of whether of what adjustments might need to be made to the program for 2020. And the 2 options that are in the agenda are simply to suspend the program until some point later in the year, maybe the fall or late fall. And the second option is to try and proceed this spring in some fashion. And does anyone want to jump in with some comments on that? Michael.
If I may. Okay, I'm going to be the advocate of not cancelling it, but suspending it for the time being. We still have not approved the budget yet, and the budget it does not come up. I think it's about April the 15th. Am I right, Steph? I think the budget comes 14th. Up at the council meet. Yes, and the issue we're all dealing with is how many emails can we deal with in a day? And I don't think we do ourselves any harm by saying budget not approved, situation still very fluid. I see a lot of people trying to cope with various issues and a huge amount of wheel spinning. And I'd almost, if I had my way, I'd put my hand up and say, could we possibly just hold till we get a clearer line of sight as what is happening, and then we can revisit this. And it would not even offend me at all if people said, in view of everything that is going on, which leaves so many questions unanswered, obviously, because really the fair thing to say is no one knows what they're doing, only because we've never faced these circumstances before. So therefore, to try and wedge this relatively small program in the midst of all this confusion it doesn't seem helpful. And that's why I suppose I've been an advocate of if necessary, hold it, and then we can revisit it when we really know what we're doing. Because my biggest nervousness is people spending a whole ton of time only to find good decisions get reversed because the world looks different in a couple of days or couple of weeks' time.
Michael, let me ask, just to clarify, are you suggesting that, of course, the granting funds stay in the budget, be requested in the budget, but once they're approved in whatever form, held off?
Well,
Or are you suggesting they be removed for this year?
I probably, if I was voting at council, I would probably vote for them to be removed in this year, because I think we need to keep all our powder dry. We don't know who we need to help yet. I'm not sure how we would look after this from an accounting standpoint, because we're not abandoning ship, but whether I would actually commit funds, because we're facing our population with our community with a 7.6% increase right now, and that is, and I say this budget is not approved. So I would put my hand up to defer this for 12 months.
Okay.
And you know, I know it's difficult, but then it's not as difficult as some of the businesses I'm working with, and I think of their agonizing decisions they're going through. Right now, this doesn't seem too agonizing to me. It actually seems relatively straightforward.
Okay.
And I can't say more than that.
Yvonne, do you have thoughts?
I think, I mean, I agree with Michael on a number of points. The only thing that I would consider is if there was any option to support emergency pieces, like, you know, as an example, and I know the food bank isn't necessarily, it runs through the church, but something that in the immediate we could provide a little bit of support if they needed that as this situation progresses. If there was a caveat to do something in that nature for whatever nonprofits that are considered essential services and will need some ongoing support in some fashion, that would be my only thing where I would go, is that an avenue for us to consider, or is the Muni already taking that into consideration?
I think discussions this coming Monday and on April 15th will take exactly that. What funds do we have for the necessary help for things that we haven't even thought of yet, because we've no prior experience to draw upon. So we're looking into a very vacant space, because we just don't know what we might be required to save for. So I wish I could answer your question directly, but I'm saying is any sums of money will maybe have to be done.
Michael, your microphone's being,
Okay, sorry.
there you go.
Any avenue that we're working on, you know, we just don't know. We just don't know. Therefore, to commit funds specifically at this stage is incredibly difficult.
Yvonne, am I understanding, it seems to me there's two avenues. One is for this committee to be able to retool and grant monies in a different way than we were expecting. The alternative is to, in essence, give the money back to the Muni to divvy out as it sees fit. Which of those appeals to you? Or do you care either way?
Well, no, I care. I mean, I completely understand what Michael is talking about, because you're walking into the land of unknown, and I appreciate that. I think the piece for me is just, and I'm fine to vote to say yes, hold it off for a year, give it to the Muni. I would just like to ensure that there's insurances that what we know now, and we do know now that food security, as an example, is highly important and would be considered an essential service. So elements like the food bank that people are going to draw more and more upon as this progresses, it's going to be a long haul, that you know, that there would be money allocated for that. It wouldn't be something that would
drift back into the general coffers.
Yeah, right. So that's my only piece. So you know,
Could we make a recommendation to that effect if that's something we decided?
You can recommend
Yes,
whatever you want.
yes, yes, you absolutely could, and I invite you to do that, because consensus amongst the group is very preferable. I just wish I could be so much more definitive, and I can't. I do have a resistance against actually committing monies right now, and if it's going to be deferred, it should be guaranteed that it is a deferral for the 2020 year and 2020 year only. There has to be a sunset clause on this. Secondly, if it's deferred and you want to say that if the money is taken to the to help the community, you may want to make reference to specific ways you'd like to see that happen.
Yes, that's what I meant. Okay. Penny, do you want to go?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I'd love to. Because I think I'm a contrary voice. To start with, I think we're going to be living in a place of uncertainty for some time. And that we have to sort of learn to live with that uncertainty. And I guess that's, I know that's really tough. Speaking from as a nonprofit myself, I know that these reducing funding or pulling back on funding for nonprofits right now is, and I know none of the ones that we're dealing with are, fully dependent on what we offer with this granting program, but any reduction, in my mind, is a mistake. And I think what we're missing here by, putting it back in the coffers of the municipality is we're not actually hearing the voice of the nonprofits. Like, what are they facing in these times, and what do they need from us? So I'd like to see it stay. I'd like to keep it in the budget, and I'd like to keep it as a granting program. I agree that we may have to delay it until the budget is approved. But if the budget, if it's already a line item in the budget, I think this isn't where we should be cutting.
So Penny, in that scenario where the budget, let's assume the budget gets approved for the sum we've requested, would you envisage a granting round now, a granting round in the fall, or both, or what? How would you see it?
I would say within a 30 to 60 day time frame of the budget being approved, because I think this is when nonprofits, and we might see like a completely different list come, or grants applications come forward. I agree with Yvonne in that there are some frontline resources that may come through in this granting process that we don't even know about yet.
So for example, not the soccer club, but
something dealing with people without housing, sort of emergency needs. And I don't know if we need to state that that's exclusive, because I'm really curious about what some of the other nonprofits or community groups that we work with, or who might be looking at this funding, what they have in their mind. I'm thinking about the food resilience, what is it called? Sustainability group.
Birch?
No,
Or
housing.
Lunch.
Food sovereignty.
Yeah.
Food sovereignty group.
Thank you.
or even groups that are doing, mental health is huge. So even if there was outreach, as an example, I don't even know if the Children's Center does this, but even if there was outreach to, online pieces for parents and kids to have some mental health support as they work their way through all of that, to me, that would also be considered an essential service. Just as I'm jumping onto Penny's thing to add on to other examples.
Thank you. Yeah. So that's what I mean. Like in this time, we need to have innovation because we need to learn to do things differently. And this is an opportunity to help fund some of that innovation within our community.
One question I have about that, I was thinking is, if, for example, the granting, the grant was opened, the applications were opened, and it may be that the applications all come from people with immediate needs, very responsive to COVID, and we could, in theory, retool to, or, you know, kind of pivot to answer that call. But I'm wondering about our more traditional applications, if they come in for fall programming, or, you know, we're running this thing, you know, that kind of stuff, that, you know, lights for Light Up the Cove, which are difficult because nobody knows what's going to happen, if it's going to happen, that kind of stuff. I don't know. That's all I wondered about that, because it feels like the programming for fall is probably slowed down. But Michelle, over to, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to hijack. Over to you.
No, you didn't hijack. I'm sort of just taking everything in. I am in the unfortunate position of agreeing basically with everything that's been said, which is unfortunate because some of it is contradictory. So some things, not in any particular order, that are on my mind. One thing is, to speak to what you were just saying, Andrea, is I wonder if it would make sense to do 2 cycles and have, if we decide to proceed, have one that is for what's on people's minds right now, which is immediate COVID response kind of things, most likely, but put aside a pool of money that could be applied for in the fall, when people have a better sense of, have we been allowed to leave our houses yet? For, you know, if we don't, no one can go outside, then we don't need to fund Light Up Bowen this year. And so maybe some of these things that would be for actually funded activities later in the year, we would maybe look later at the year considering them. Another thought I had was that, I mean, I'm very sympathetic to Michael's point. I think that the municipality is going to have lots of unexpected expenses this year, and giving them the freedom to work with as much of the budget as they can makes a lot of sense to me. Having said that, I'm also sensitive to Penny's point that there are things that people do that are not in the municipality that might be useful for supporting the community and providing some services. And I guess my feeling would be that to be just as transparent as possible. And so if we decide to move forward with a funding cycle immediately, let's see, who's having trouble hearing? Oh, I don't know. If instead of just going forward with a normal funding cycle, having some framing to it and saying, so we would like to support grants this spring that have a COVID focus. So the people who might want to apply for Light Up the Cove, or might want to apply for the golf course, or might want to apply for the football club, maybe they sit this one out because it's been sort of framed that that's not going to be our priority, because we don't want to waste people's time applying for something that we're not really going to consider about. So if we want to have that framework, we should just be explicit about it. That was a lot. I'm done.
I'm wondering, I guess that maybe this is underlying all of your comments, but I'm wondering, I'm so mindful of not seeming tone deaf always, right? And right now, you know, for us to do any kind of normal, offering any kind of normal grant cycle might just really feel a bit off, to be honest.
Yeah.
Which leaves us, then I'm wondering, well, what we're offering is COVID responsive funding, and somehow that doesn't feel quite, are we the best people to be making those calls? There's people I mean on the front lines of figuring out the financial response. I'm open either way, but that was kind of my thinking. Are we the best, are we in the best position to know where the few dollars that are around are needed in our community? Maybe we are, I don't know.
Can I just take, Andrea, to help us enormously, what has happened is coordination between all the municipalities on things from mental health to states of emergency has, with our blessing, by the way, largely to be controlled and organized through the province. Otherwise, we end up with a really messy patchwork quilt of applications or responses to what's going on. Can you imagine if you just take the 3 municipalities on the North Shore, if they all came to different decisions on the same thing? It would just be ungovernable. So the larger issues are definitely being coordinated through the provincial government. And as I say, that's with our support, because we just couldn't see how it was going to work any other way. I would suggest perhaps that you might care, in fact, to defer this conversation any further till after the budget discussions, and see whether we could arrange, as part of those budget discussions, to try and provide some direction as to where this 41,000, Raj confirmed to me, we're talking about a sum of 41,000. He confirmed that to me this morning, where that could be most beneficially applied. Perhaps it would be appropriate for us to say that we've had a conversation, we have discussed this, we're waiting for the outcome of the budget discussions, which hopefully also might provide some direction, which we can follow up on at a subsequent meeting.
Yvonne, I can't see whether you want to speak, so I'm assuming you do.
Oh yeah, well, I don't like my picture, so that's why.
Oh, you goof! Would you just show up? I haven't worn makeup in 2 weeks, for the love of God.
I'm not a picture girl. It's not my thing.
All right, but then you got to tell us when you want to talk.
Oh, okay. Well, I usually just sort of wait, and then if I don't hear anybody, I kind of jump in. You know, again, we're back to the whole piece of unprecedented times. I'm sorry to use that word because I'm so exhausted in hearing that word. But it speaks the volumes to where it sits. So I understand all the municipalities are under the provincial guise to support and provide services the best way they can. I get that. But as a little island, some of this money that we have gets to go directly in a very timely manner to support pieces that need to be supported in a very timely manner. So I understand, and I totally appreciate where Michael is coming from. If I knew that the $41,000 was we had some clout around how that was to be recommended where it would be spent, I would be somewhat comfortable with that. But I also sit in Penny's camp, because I too have a nonprofit, which we've had to shut down right now. And I also recognize that it's the nonprofits on the ground that are trying to make sure that the people that need what they need to have, because it's a world that's unrecognizable, everybody's coming to them for some kind of help. So, you know, time matters, and we can see it right now when the federal government is talking about support measures and the length of time it's going to take to get those support measures financially just in place for the businesses is a massive amount of time, and Lord only knows what that's going to do for the businesses. I kind of sit in the camp of being able to have a little bit of something after we know what the budget is, to be able to do then also what Michelle was talking about, maybe 2 separate cycles, that one that speaks to what we know we can do for emergency services that we know that's on the island, like the food bank that does and is getting drawn on more heavily now and does need that extra support, that often doesn't get the money except through us. So that's kind of what I'm looking at. I'm looking at some of those programs that don't get the money unless it's coming through somebody like us that the muni wouldn't necessarily have on their radar. And it's not disrespectful in any shape or form. That's where I'm sitting. I'm not sure that was remotely helpful, but that's where my head's going.
I'm agreeing with you, but I'm just, in a way, I think the problem with doing traditional granting cycles is the delay. Yeah. And so is there a way to be even faster about it by just saying, I'm just thinking out loud, you know, by just saying whatever money we get, can we just hand it to this entity to get those funds somewhere quickly? Or do we give it just to the food bank? Or do we split it between the caring circle and the food bank? Or, you know, instead of getting people to spend hours and hours that they don't have right now filling out forms for $1,500 to help somebody in 2 to 3 months. I'm
right with you.
kind of surfing on your sense of urgency, Yvonne.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. That's kind of where I'm going with this. And I totally appreciate where Michael is coming from, and I understand completely where his thinking is going. I'm only the clog in this only because I'm thinking of the immediate pieces that I know get left off the radar, like the food bank. And I keep pushing that food bank piece because I know they're swamped. And they need immediate help now. They need an opportunity to have money that they can source out cheaper, you know, bulk and cheap. That's going to be able to sustain a larger part of the island. And as this continues, there is going to be a larger pull from the island on something like the food bank. So for me, I kind of sit in the camp of what, you know, if we can get money to them and anybody else that would sit in that ballpark. Penny, probably you would know more about some of the other organizations that are like the food bank that need something now to keep everybody somewhat sustained and grounded and not completely goofy. That's where I would push to, and try and do things that way.
Thanks, Yvonne. Sorry, I missed Aoife. Aoife had a comment earlier, I think.
Sorry, I just wanted to bring back kind of the core purpose of the committee is actually to make the recommendation to council using a documented weighted evaluation criteria, and there's an adjudication process in place there. I'm not sure the municipality is someone the council want to hear from in terms of, I think the committee was brought together and designed to get the best voice for the not-for-profits in the community. And so part of my concern with some of what we're discussing here is kicking the decision making back to the municipality. I'm not sure is where council are going to want to hear what the recommendation is from. I also want to just put it out there that the budget is actually a 5-year plan. It's not a 1-year plan. And so, can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Yeah. And so that 5-year plan, I think if you wanted to suspend or defer for a year, you would want to be very careful that it doesn't affect the 5-year plan and this ends up getting wiped.
Yes, of course. Yeah, for sure. We'd be very clear it was just this year.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think if you did want to do something that was actually changing the eligibility criteria, so for example, saying that this cycle would be eligibility criteria specifically for COVID, I personally think that people who have a greater need in the community in this time won't mind you amending the eligibility criteria. I think those other previous applicants who may not apply because of the COVID crisis or anything like that may not be in such need. And yeah, I just wanted to just speak just personally from a committee point of view as well. I think that the sum that's being the sum that's being sort of ring fenced for this program and for the committee to adjudicate over is probably something that's split into 2 cycles may not have the same effect. Yeah, so sorry. So that's kind of where I am with it, but obviously I want to help you guys do whatever you need to do.
If you want to continue on that line, and I think you've brought us back to base camp very well, then that would be a discussion that would have to take place after the budget is passed, amending the criteria slightly for this 1 year, as you suggested, because I think what you said made great sense, and then at least you know you're working on a good platform. If it's approved, then you can go ahead with that slightly modified criteria, assuming that's generally agreed.
Penny? Oh, you're muted, hon. You're muted. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, got it. Sorry. Thanks. No, it is definitely lots to think about as far as timing and need. I think it's really interesting. I mean, I think the piece about what's the voice of the nonprofits, I'm thinking about Family Place and the need of, the resource it's been when we could gather for young mothers to meet and share their experiences, and what's going on with things like Family Place. Like, are they innovating in how to gather? And maybe they're doing the free Zoom, but maybe they have other ideas of ways of engaging people and supporting them through these times. So that's why I'm going to sort of stick to I'm really interested in what grants we would receive.
In hearing from the nonprofits.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or grant applications, yeah. And but I also see, 6 months from now, in the fall, we might have different needs. So I'm also interested in that idea of 2 cycles, if that's possible. But I think that's all.
Michelle, did you have anything to add? It's okay if you don't, but I just want you to stay in the loop.
No, thank you. I appreciate that. My only, the thing that I'm sort of pondering in listening about what's been said in the last few minutes is we've talked a lot about the food bank as an example of a critical service. And I wonder if we didn't run a traditional grant cycle, or if we didn't run one now, would the municipality would there be a way, and this is sort of a question for you, Michael, although Aoife, you may know this, would the municipality have the wherewithal to like shoot some money to the food bank to keep it afloat if our committee weren't pulling the strings to make that happen?
That's an incredibly good question. Do we look at these funds and put them almost like an in-trust account and say, we've taken the $41,000 for this year, for, shall we say, we're holding it in this account for the next, shall we say, 3 to 4 months, with other lump sums of money, and which we are holding for the food bank, for whatever else. That is a discussion we are going to be held, because municipalities don't have spare sums of money. As you know, we have to zero up our accounts every year. We cannot run debts without a referendum, basically, which you all have to vote on. And that's designed for everybody's safety. So we only have what we have. And I know $41,000 is a lot of money, but having seen what people are going through right now at a provincial and federal level, it seems to keep the clock ticking just for a very short period of time. So I don't have an answer to your question as to how we're going to manage these emergencies, or are we going to have to apply to federal provincial grants to cover off on these amounts? Because I'm going to suggest to you that many of them, if things go really bad for us, will be so far in excess of 41,000. That amount of money will seem almost trivial, and believe me, it isn't. And I'm not trying to make it seem so. Given where we're at, that is what we're going to be discussing, or part of what we're going to be discussing this Monday, and I think the subsequent Monday, because we've now basically got council meetings every week.
Okay. If I understand this correctly, and please tell me if I don't, one of the challenges that Aoife and Penny are pointing out is that if we place monies in trust, or we're not fully hearing from the not-for-profits in the community who might need money in ways we can't even anticipate. So it might sound terrific that we all want to give money to the food bank, and of course I do, but Oh, sorry, Steph. Okay.
I'm not on the committee. I'm not supposed to talk. I just want to share that this isn't as open as it should be for
I see.
guys. It should be an open meeting. It should be live. There should be people allowed to be in the room. That's not happening here. So there may be people out there who want to get in your guys' ears, but haven't really been given the opportunity yet.
Yes. Well, and I guess, but I mean, even hearing from not-for-profits through their applications, as Penny has suggested. So we're talking about the food bank or other groups of need, but that's just based on what we know. It's not an actual call for need. That's, I guess, we've really got to be careful about that too. Yeah. So where are we? Okay, so where are we? So the question is, let me try and break it down on the fly. The question is, if I have this right, do we want to just defer our process 1 year and basically give the money back to, put the money back into the muni pot? Because I think that's all we can do. And maybe with a recommendation that the monies be earmarked for not-for-profits in need. But I take Aoife's point, that's not really a cool thing to do. So a recommendation would just be use it for COVID response. I think is probably all we could say. So that's one option. The other option is to wait and see what we get in the budget and then run a grant cycle. And if we do that, should it be COVID specific, or should it be COVID specific and then a regular in the fall? I have to say that second part, it does not appeal to me right now. Just doing 2 grant cycles in 1 year, which we just managed to get rid of. It's in times like this, it's cuckoo town from my perspective, but hey, I get it. And I'm not so worried about the regulars right now. Okay, is that right? So number 1, we kind of let it go and say, we'll be back to regular programming next year. Do what you got to do, Muni, or do we get our dough and run a grant cycle where we are accepting our specific role to identify not-for-profit needs that others might not see, even if that money could go, I mean, and by doing that, we're accepting that we might be taking money from other programs that need it, but we're okay with that because we might be serving programs that others don't even see.
If I can, Andrew, what you could do is could you just read your first one out again, please? I'm sorry.
Yes. It's chicken scratch with a happy face on it.
Yeah,
Do we want to defer our grants program for 1 year? So in effect, ask for 4 years of funding out of the next five-year budget. In so doing, kind of, so asking for 0 budget for this year, in effect, with a recommendation that the Muni assign those funds to its COVID response, because my feeling is that's all we can say, right?
Yeah. Okay.
And the second option is to take our 2020 grant funds and run a grant cycle. I'm going to propose a single grant cycle that is COVID response specific. I'm really just trying to circle us down now, but I don't want to leave any good ideas
That
out.
sounds good
Okay.
to me.
Yeah.
Faceless me.
Yeah, the only piece I question is whether we put in that is COVID response specific.
Well, I guess the alternative would be to run our normal grant cycle, Penny, and just say, of course, these are extraordinary times. And we expect we expect that there'll be lots of people, I don't know, just almost invite COVID response applications, but not make it exclusive. Would that work for you?
Yeah.
We could use language like preference will be given.
Yeah. prioritizing.
Yeah,
preference, yeah.
yeah. And then I guess in that second option, the question is whether that cycle happens now or in the fall. And frankly, you know, maybe it's just me feeling wildly all of us are feeling wildly overrun. Maybe some of those needs will be more congealed, you know what I'm saying, in the fall. I don't know, but I could be wrong. But why don't we stick to should we just vote on 1 or 2 for now, or more discussion?
I'm good with voting.
Mhm.
I'm good with voting.
Me too. I just want to think about it for a sec.
We're voting on 2. Vote number 2.
No, we're voting between 1 and 2.
Okay.
So 1 is a complete deferral. 2 is a modified 2020 grant cycle.
So are you going to ask us are you asking individually, like Yvonne, are you going for option 1 or option 2? Penny, option 1, option 2. Are you doing that, or what do you?
I don't know. What should we do?
Well,
Penny,
if you hear from us, you hear from us, and you can. It's not about did I see your hand or didn't I see your hand.
No, we're not there yet.
Okay.
No. And I'm just realizing I don't, we can't do it that way. Who votes number 1? Who votes number 2? Can we do that?
you can. You can. Penny, would it be helpful on number 1 to say subject to any direction given on approval of the budget?
No.
Because the budget process might say, no, we want to continue this in a certain manner, etc., etc. So it softens option 1 just a little bit, because if council says, hey, we see this sum of money and we see it going in this direction, then at least it gives them the opportunity to provide some input on the subject. I mean, they'll provide input anyway, but as part of this motion.
Sorry, Michael, who would provide input?
Well, it's subject to, if you look at your first one, it says you will defer, etc., right, on option 1.
Yeah.
But it will then be subject to any council direction upon passing of the 2020-2021 budget.
I must admit, I don't understand the significance of that.
That's not clarifying for me either, I'm afraid. I'm not sure how that would work or how that would help clarify things.
Well, that they might say, we don't wish you to defer. They might say they wish you to continue as normal. They might say, okay, yes, priority to COVID-related beneficiaries.
I see. They might say, we need you guys on the ground figuring this out and getting this $1,500 out here and there.
Yeah.
Or they might say, thank you very much. We desperately need this for some other response.
Yes, and we're going to scoop it away from you for a 1-year period. Yeah, but at least they can provide some direction. And that's why I wanted to soften 1 a little bit. So depending upon the direction you're going to get, because it doesn't have to be all or nothing.
What I like about that, Michael, is that by deferring it, in my mind, that takes it out of the budget altogether.
Yeah.
And it would soften number 1 for me if I knew that was being allocated to not-for-profits in a way that council sees fit, or something like that. Like the money is there and it is getting to the not-for-profits.
Yes, well,
it's a very frontline response from us. We can be on the front line doing it, but if you need it on the front lines for not-for-profits, we get that too.
Yeah, well, put it in there, because you know, I think that everyone on council will understand what you're doing and where you're going. I just want them to have a say, okay, it's not going to be deferred, or if it is, then the requests are that this committee's recommendations are strictly for along these lines. Because I mean, it's not that anyone in council is going to be unsympathetic to this. It's just trying to get things organised we've got a myriad of groups, all wonderfully well-intentioned, working along the same lines. It is actually proving to be a logistical challenge to make sure that the left hand and the right hand all belong to the same body, and they're all working together and not either duplicating, leaving people out. So this is going to be our challenge in the weeks and months to come.
Aoife, did you want to comment on where this is going?
Yeah, sorry. I just wanted to reiterate one thing. I just want you guys to know, as the committee, that you are probably the only ones with the proper documented evaluation criteria process that the community know, and that you are the ones, as in the committee, have been entrusted to make the recommendation and hear the voice of the not-for-profits. And I just wanted to reiterate that, you know, for example, if, like what you're saying, where you would kick it back to a council decision, council don't have the same evaluation criteria, adjudication process, all documented policy just right now. And I know these are weird, this is a weird scenario that we're in, but right now you guys are the ones with all those tools and the tools to do it fairly amongst the community.
Yes, you're right.
Yeah, that's a very good point.
That changes the nature of the beast right there for me.
Well, let's do it.
Let's do it.
Spring or fall?
In terms of,
I mean, are we saying let's do it? Then do we just go ahead and be our not-for-profit selves and get on, you know, supporting selves and get on with it?
are you taking a vote?
No, I'm just asking for them. We're still discussing. Okay, let's take a vote. I don't know.
No, I'm just asking for clarity so I know what
Yeah, I don't have any clarity. Penny, what do you think? Are we ready, guys?
I think we should take a vote on those two scenarios, and then I think we can take a second vote on whether it's spring or fall,
I think Steph has a comment.
if we go with it.
Go, Steph.
Can you guys do an informal vote on which one you'd like, and then we can do a proper vote on a recommendation for my purposes?
Okay.
So once
Okay.
you've done your 1 or 2-1, then
So just informally, as I understand it, so you're going to be asked to vote 1 or 2. So one is deferring or going to the muni and saying we propose. Actually, it doesn't make any sense anymore. Okay, so let's just keep it simple. Number 1 is we'll defer this for a year. Take this money back into the budget for this year. We know you've got a lot of fish to fry, but we will be back next year and for the next 4 years of this 5-year budget. Number 2 is we wait and see what our budget is, what budget we get voted, and then we run a traditional grant cycle with a COVID prioritization. Okay? So Yvonne, you're gonna have to shout.
Number 2,
Yes or no? Okay, so votes for number 1. Michael. Votes for number 2.
Yvonne.
Okay. So the grant cycle, the timing of the grant cycle and the narrowing of the priorities we should talk about, right? Anybody want to speak to the pros of going now, of doing a spring? Penny?
I'm happy to voice my or use my voice to say let's go with a spring. I feel like people, like now is a really great time to get resources in the hands of people who can put it to good use to support the community. Pending the budget approval on the April 15th, which will really be, you know, realistically call for proposals by May 15th, through the adjudicator. So they won't have it till June 15th, but it gives them at least, minimum a month. And people are working very fast right now to respond. So I think in another month, we'll sort of have some more clarity within our uncertain world.
How would that timeline link in with the Community Foundation's grant timelines? Does anyone know? I don't.
I just put a call out.
Yes,
Just put a call out.
I don't know what their application dates was, but okay. So maybe
I thought it was early April, but I don't know if it has been changed.
okay. And that was their regular granting process, not their little one, not the neighborhood one.
Oh, that was the neighborhood one is the one I'm thinking of.
Yeah. Yeah, we're still without further information. That's still under discussion. They're still working their way through the bigger project.
Okay. I'm just mindful that some people might be putting 2 applications and they don't know, but it sounds like we're not going to clash right now. Okay. So anyone want to speak to the benefits of doing it in the fall?
I'll speak to that. I don't feel strongly about this. I can see the advantages really to both. But I think that by the fall, we would hopefully have a little bit more clarity. At this point, like every single thing feels up in the air. Like everything feels up in the air. We don't have any idea what the day after tomorrow is going to look like. So if we did a fall competition for a fall-winter funding cycle, we would maybe have gotten a little bit more sense of what our world looks like by then. Like what is going to be moving forward? Who needs the most help? Who has been helped? What has the province done in the meantime? And a way to fill in some of those gaps.
I think the cautious lawyer in me is I connect with that just because it's just, let's just slow things down just a smidge. But I appreciate that's not what most people are saying at this time. I get it.
Could you say 30 days to be agreed, 30 days after approval of the budget, precise time to be agreed by this group?
Sure. In the interest of getting off this call, Michael?
No. I believe me, I've been on calls, but in the interest of moving this along, because I'm used to being the odd man out when it comes to voting, but in the spirit of moving this on, if you give the budget's approved, shall we say then 30 days afterwards, this is a decision you can take after the budget is approved. And if you hunt, no one's gonna be there counting the days on the calendar, I can assure you, but that you're setting a guideline. And if you feel at that time, hey, you want that to be not 30, you want it to be further down, that's a decision you can take.
Right on.
Woohoo!
Sorry,
I feel I've got to do something to earn my keep today.
Michael, I owe you, man. I've got another call at 3, so we're doing this.
All right,
Steph.
Steph.
Okay, I've got a recommendation for you to vote on. That the Community Grants Advisory Committee resolve to proceed with the traditional granting process with the prioritization of COVID-19 pandemic-related applications, and that the timing of the 2020 granting process will be discussed and decided subsequent to budget approval by Council.
Awesome sauce.
Thank you.
You rock.
Can I do something?
Yeah, thanks,
with that?
Naran.
Yes, can I guess that?
I need a mover.
I'll move it.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
All in favor?
Yes.
Okay.
Thanks, everybody.
And by the way, we will faithfully, that is your wish, by the way, and believe me,
hold
we
on.
will faithfully relay that to Council.
Thank you, Michael.
Okay.
Michael, you voted in favor of that? Yeah.
Yes. If that's the way you want to go as a group, then I've got to support the group. So now, then that's why that's what I'm here for. To put a point of view is good, but if that's what you all decide, then that's how we go forward.
Thank you, Michael.
Great.
Thanks, Michael.
We're identifying ourselves as the not-for-profit whisperers. Yeah. Okay.
So we can live up to it.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
You guys are
Love your
amazing
brain.
volunteers. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
everybody.
thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.